Could you tell us a little bit more about the importance of nasal breathing?
The one thing that you've probably been talking about before or heard about before is nitric oxide, of course. And this is like first and foremost, it's a vasodilator, which means that all the blood vessels open up. So when you think about the lungs themselves, all the blood vessels, they branch out 24 different times. And towards the lower lobe of the lungs is where like there's really, really thick and dense amount of blood vessels. All of that opens up and makes it easier for you to breathe. But also it's the most hygienic way to breathe. So, of course, it's filtering out pathogens, particles, fungus. It's a super healthy way to breathe as well.
Welcome back to the Charlène Gisele show. Today, we are going to talk about our breath, nasal breathing, cold exposure, and how optimizing the way you breathe can optimize the way you feel. I am deeply honored to have Leigh with us today, whom I've met many, many years ago in Finland, practicing cold exposure together. And I'm so glad that we can now share this space to talk about one of my favorite topics in the whole world, breathwork. Leigh, welcome to the Charlène Gisele show.
Thank you. So good to be here. And yes, of course, I always remember you were one of the most keen and excited people in this Biohackers Optimized Day we had. You were like one of the first people just to jump straight in the cold water off the balcony, off the jetty, sorry, like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm drawn to the cold. What can I say? And I didn't used to be. I learned to embrace the cold, actually. And it's been transformational because I think when you can get into the cold with the support of your breath, you can really get into a space where everything quiets down and you're just anchored into the now. And as a former lawyer, I'm very much a, stuck into the past or going into the future type of girl. So being in the now has been a very humbling journey and something that I've learned through breathwork and cold. So I'm glad that you noticed my enthusiasm and excitement for the cold.
Absolutely. It was on full display.
It was on full display, yes. I can't hide it. Perhaps, Leigh, you could tell us a little bit more about how you started your journey embracing the cold and breathwork and how you connected the dots between the two. And can I also bring it to everybody's attention, as an Australian man living in heat and the sun, now being in the ice is quite the jump of climate.
Yeah. Well, of course, I'm from Sydney, right? So it's really been a complete sea change to come and move to Finland. I've been living here for 16 years. And, almost by like a default or a joke, my colleagues were sort of like really, really enthusiastic about watching the Aussie guy go into the cold. So around Christmas time, we have like this sauna culture here in Finland. Sauna is the only Finnish word in the English dictionary, by the way, and it's pronounced sauna. We have to say it correctly. These guys have the sauna, but then also there's 188,000 lakes. And of course, this sauna was on a lake. The guys just they just said, okay, get in, So it was like, I was going to say baptism of fire, but it was sort of the opposite way, baptism of ice in a sense. And it was funny because they kept making me do that. And the more that they made me do it year upon year, I said, you know what, like, I don't want to I want to prove that I can do it. So it was sort of my initiation it's sort of like an initiation that they had placed upon me, but I also wanted to prove like I can handle this. So I just started practicing myself in the Baltic Sea pretty much every morning, every second morning, learning all the mistakes, sometimes feeling like, oh, I've done a bit too much, I've gone a bit too far this time. But this last time that I went there with them, they noticed that I've like something switched, something changed, So yeah, it was the way to do it. And then also, moving all the way here, it's 5-6 months where it's snow on the ground. So it's not like you want to stay inside. It's very, very like claustrophobic to stay indoors for the entire winter and wait for something else to happen. Plus the concept of waiting and waiting for a better day, it doesn't vibe with me so much. I want to take everything in. So yeah, I had to embrace the winter and not a skier. So the cold Cold exposure, jumping in the cold was my thing.
Did cold come first for you, or did breathwork come first for you, or did one connect the other?
Yeah, the cold came first. Yeah, exactly this. You know, just off the bat, I've been living a very, very typical masculine life, you know, and if I feel something, if I feel sad or if I feel emotional or whatever, it's like, okay, let's go, let's get active, let's run, let's go to the gym, all those kind of things, you know, not really handling those things or a little bit pushing them to the side. And for me, the cold, it sort of represented this time out, you know, like you said before off the opening of the show, like past, future, it's irrelevant. You're sort of in the cold and you have to deal with that in the present moment. And of course, as we know, the present moment is, you know, the anchor to the present moment is the breath. So through the process of getting used to the cold, I started understanding that, you know what, like actually there's a lot of things that you can kind of influence and manage and regulate from just breathing in a certain way. And the cold is always the thing that takes your breath right away. You get in, you know, there's a couple of layers. You go up to about the waist, that's cold. Then you go up to the chest and that really takes the breath away. And then you're kind of like, okay. And you just realize that actually this is a stressed situation. And this is happening in a road rage. It's happening if you sometimes disagree with someone or have an argument. Stress is rising in the body the same way. It doesn't sort of discriminate. And hey, the breath is there for us always. You can kind of manage or at least maneuver through these stressful states or even down-regulate with the right kind of breathing.
And I would love to talk about down-regulating a little bit. Our audience is often experiencing heightened anxiety, chronic stress, a lot of pressure. And one of the number one thing they say to me is, I have so little time and so much to do. And one of the reasons I love breath work is because it's always there, right? It's always with us, but we don't tap into it. Could you perhaps walk us through quite how fundamental breath work is to down regulating and to managing our stress response and anxiety levels?
Well, you know, breathing's so interesting thing because like the experts are telling us that we breathe 25,000 times per day. In fact, actually, I would recommend anyone listening to this or watching this, if you have a phone or if you have some sort of device next to you, put the calculator on. We can do this one very, very simple exercise. You put the calculator on. And we type in 25,000 because that's the amount of breaths that we take in a day, according to medical professionals. Then we're going to multiply that by 365. Then we're going to multiply that by your age.
This is the part where we reveal our age. But we're biohackers. We don't age. We age in reversely.
Yeah. Well, so next time we do it, the numbers go down. Maybe, I don't know. But for me personally, I don't mind if someone reverse engineer this. But for me personally, that would equal 392,375,000. I'll save you. I'm 43 years old. Okay, so like think about this: 392 million breaths I've taken. You know, maybe plus minus a few here and there, of course, on average. Now, how many of those are actually conscious? How many of those are we? You know, it's an autonomous process of the body, like it's happening on its own by itself, but we can always jump in the driver's seat of the car and drive this body of ours and take it where we want to go, you know. But like, how often are we doing that? And the thing I've noticed a lot with breath work is that, and breathing itself, is that nobody or very few people are interested about it until the proverbial shit hits the fan, so to say, you know. It's like, it's not until there's a threat on that or it's gone or it's irregular or we have asthmatic symptoms or something like this, then we become interested about it. So in a way, that's kind of like the rehab approach. And what I'm kind of guiding people towards is sort of the prehab approach, which is kind of getting out before it and getting out in front of it and saying, hey, listen, maybe I can just breathe exactly the way I need to, dependent upon the situation. And as I say often, it's you breathe how you want to live. There are times in the life where we want to get the energy. Let's not forget, by the way, the core and primary reason why we breathe is because we need oxygen inside the body, because the nutrients that we've been consuming, the breakfast, the lunch, whatever, coffee, all of those things, we can't use. It's not available to us. The energy is not available until it goes through the chemical process, which of course needs oxygen, right? So to create a certain molecule that the body can use as energy. I think sometimes we forget about these things, like really on a biological level. When we talk about energy and breathing, we can talk about lots of things, but biological energy, like physical energy, that's first and foremost. So there are times where we want to breathe more. There are times where we want to, we're running, we're doing something active, and we need to breathe more to generate more energy. But for the rest of the time, we probably want to breathe less. We want to have that focus. We want to have the calm. We want to have sort of influence and control over our emotions and feelings so that we can receive as well as, express as well. Mm-hmm. So, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then you look at all the other systems in the body. We were mentioning just before about the nervous system itself. The nervous system is, absolutely tied in to the breath. In fact, the vagus nerve, which is the wandering nerve that, it travels down the neck actually and into the heart and other key organs of the body, including the digestive system, amongst others. It's influenced by the breath. So every time we exhale, it stimulates the vagus nerve and it drops the heart rate a little bit. And, we know there's like ways of stimulating the vagus nerve even more. For example, we can simply hum. This humming, this or this in the yogi world, it's this om sound, this chanting om sound. We know also that if you're singing, it's also stimulating the vagus nerve as well. Like a lot of things that involve the throat, because it will stimulate the vagus nerve and lower the heart rate. So, we know that it's tied to the nervous system. We know that it's tied to the digestive system, breathing that is. We know that the lymphatic system and how we push the toxins through the body is related to the breath as well. We know that when we lose fat and burn fat, we exhale, like literally fat. When we burn fat, it goes somewhere and it's on the exhale that it leaves the body. There's so many things where the breath is like either directly or indirectly linked to. So going full circle back to the original equation, this huge number, 392 million for me, how many of those breaths am I actually conscious about? And am I interested in regulating and influencing the body's production of energy, or my digestive system, or my nervous system, and actually the immune system, hormonal function, certain hormones through the body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the answer to me is yes, I want to have responsibility of those. I'm here to take responsibility of those.
And what do you think are some of the most common day-to-day behavior that dysregulate our breathing pattern and actually have a negative impact on the overall well-being, performance, and cognition?
Oh my goodness, how long we got? I mean, there's so many things, right? Like, look, it goes without saying at this point that like the reason we are speaking now is because of technology, because we're sitting at a computer desk, or for me, I have a laptop propped up on a couple of books here and everything like that. It's not, but this is a beautiful thing. It makes so much possible. But at the same time, we're constantly staring into the blue light here. It's creating some small, in a way, stress for the body, like the blue light, unless you have certain programs on your computer. The postural things are affecting the breathing big time, because you start having this hunched over posture. like even now I feel myself, because like you're on this screen, I want to be kind of like closer to you, you know? So I'm kind of like finding myself moving over like this. And it's the same with many people. If you have a mobile device, you're kind of crouching over like this. And how that affects the breathing is on the, you know, the diaphragm, and the breathing infrastructure starts compressing, and we can't actually take a deep breath. And then, of course, you're talking about like, I mean, if you watch the news 2 or 3 times a day, I mean, this is very shocking. It's very, we're empathetic beings, you know. It's very hard to watch what's on the television when you see kids, atrocities happening around the world and so on. So we start breathing, like in this kind of like hyper, you know, we get very, very sensitive to these things, and we start breathing. Maybe there's a slight sympathetic edge to almost everything we do, you know, and it can turn up in our relationships. It can turn up in the workplace for sure. And of course, if you don't have if you have a stress, or if you have these kind of things happening at work, it comes back home with you, and vice versa. So it doesn't take much. It doesn't take too much before we start to actually be out of control, you know. And then we talk about, like, if you're breathing more and higher up in the body, it's activating more larger muscle groups, like the you know, the chest muscles, the shoulders, the neck as well. So like if we're really breathing higher up in the body, it means more oxygen, more blood goes to these bigger muscles. And actually that means we're generating more energy to produce the breath, right? So it's in a way like the net energy, or the net effect or result of the breath is actually a minus in a sense, because it's actually taking more energy to produce the breath than it's giving. So we start finding things coming unstuck very quickly around the workplace in general.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you mentioned the diaphragm. And I also really love your work around training the diaphragm, and how, as a society as a whole, culturally, I think we're very prone to going to the gym to train our biceps or our quads, or core, right? Because they're well known, they're visible, we can literally see them grow and change.
Exactly.
When it comes to our diaphragm, it's a little harder to check it out in the mirror. Can you tell us more about the importance of the diaphragm, and what can we do to strengthen it, but also what do we tend to do that actually makes it either weaker or not as efficient as it could or would be with better training?
Yeah, it's a good one. Like that post was it's an interesting one. We're referring to a post that I had made recently where we're literally talking about this. Like a bite, like people, especially guys, we love to go in the gym and just train a bicep, you know, because it looks good in a t-shirt, and maybe we feel more attractive or more confident or whatsoever. But I mean, that equation, right? If we actually breathe 25,000 times a day, it's almost impossible to do 25,000. It is impossible to do 25,000 bicep curls. But like the result of that is that you have this kind of, actually, it does serve a function, but it's nowhere near as important as a diaphragm, which is literally the breathing muscle, right? Like on every inhale, the diaphragm pulls down and creates like a negative pressure and allows the oxygen to enter the body, right? And of course, this is in sort of synchronization with the rib cage and the intercostal muscles. But it's really up to the diaphragm. And, you know, anyone watching or listening can really feel the difference almost immediately if you simply, just as you are sitting there or standing there, you can literally just take 3 breaths using your mouth. So breathing in through your mouth, 3, 2, 1, breathing in and letting go. And then you would breathe in through your mouth one more time. Let go. Let's do one more. Breathe in through your mouth. Okay. So we understood, like I was a little bit watching on the camera now, and I can see it in myself that my upper body, my chest is more involved in the breathing. Now, if we turn that around and use just the nose to breathe, let's breathe 3 times using the nose. So in 3, 2, 1, we take a nice deep breath in through the nose and we let go. 2 more, breathing in And let's do one more just for fun. Breathing in, letting go. So already with this very simple exercise, you can feel that there is this pull in the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm itself is like in some studies they've shown that just simple like respiratory, like training the respiratory muscles, right? So it's actually just some repetitive training. It's not even so complicated training, just some 5 to 10 minutes a day. The actual size of the diaphragm can increase by about 15 to 17%. So just like a muscle, just like the bicep, just like any other muscle in the body, yes, you can actually get a larger and bigger diaphragm. And of course, once it's stronger, it can help you breathe. And it can help you get the oxygen inside of the body, right? Of course, there's other things that happen. Like it's not enough to just get the oxygen in the body. And if you think about it, the atmosphere is only, what we're breathing right now is only 21% oxygen. So of that 21% that we breathe in, then on average, 5% of that is actually going into 5% of the oxygen from that breath is actually making its way into the tissues, right? So even though it's kind of so simple and it's just breathing, like there are really easy ways to sort of like hack into the breath and get kind of like the maximize the effect of that. Breathing through your nose is one of them, which of course means it's more efficient. It uses the diaphragm. It trains the diaphragm as well. But then also having a little pause. So when we breathe in through the nose, we have a little pause at the top and give a little bit of time for sort of the CO2 level just to rise, just to increase a little bit. And as many people a little bit forget sometimes, the CO2 is actually the trigger to release the oxygen. So if we allow a little bit of time after the inhale and maybe even after the exhale, we really allow more of that oxygen to kind of like make its way from the blood into the cells as well.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit more about the importance of nasal breathing? I know that's one of your favorite topics.
Yeah. These things are very related, right? Like related to the diaphragm. Basically, by using nasal breathing, we start to recruit the diaphragm. We also have like these intercostal muscles here. It's really interesting, like in a way, the ribs are really like to protect all the organs here, of course, and so we can't be injured or damaged. But they're really elastic. If you kind of like feel them, like every time you breathe, if you have your hands like right on the rib cage and you start to breathe, they really, you can even see on the camera here that my hands like start moving like this. So they have this flexibility. Now, these muscles, if we start to train them and we, sometimes we're doing these stretches, or if you're doing yoga, or if you're just doing practical stretches in the gym in between workouts and things like that, it's actually helping, helping the flexibility there allows the lungs to expand even more, and it allows you to take a deeper and fuller breath of air as well. Mm-hmm. So this is also, these things are very, very tight. This is like breathing mechanics. But then when you look at the function of the nose, it has so many different functions. And of course, it's nature's way. Like every baby, unless it has some sort of deformity or something irregular there, is breathing through the nose, which is why if you have a child at home, probably the worst night's sleep you've ever had is when the poor little baby has some sort of cold or a stuffy nose, because they just can't breathe, so their mouth comes open and they're crying and want your attention and everything. But it's nature's way. Something happens along the way where, maybe it is societal things, behavioral things. We mimic each other. When we're stressed, the mouth starts coming open as well, and we're breathing irregular, and we just move away. Many of us move away from the nasal breath. When you look at the structure of everything here, it's really interesting because the little tiny hairs here are kind of like preventing the particles from entering the air passages inside the nose. we have the millions and millions and millions of these little hairs, the tiny hair called cilia. Of course, they're sort of like attracting or trapping a lot of the little particles there, and they sort of like, it's kind of like an ingenious system. It kind of like ushers that towards the back of the throat, which is kind of like, it sounds a bit gross in a way, but when we have that kind of reaction, if we feel like that, it's literally dropping that into a pit of acid. It's very sort of intuitive system that we have. And then the one thing that you've probably been talking about before or heard about before is nitric oxide, of course. And this is like first and foremost, it's a vasodilator, which means that all the blood vessels open up. So when you think about the lungs themselves, all the blood vessels, they branch out 24 different times. And towards the lower lobe of the lungs is where like there's really, really thick and dense amount of blood vessels. All of that opens up and makes it easier for you to breathe. But also it's the most hygienic way to breathe. So, of course, it's filtering out pathogens, particles, fungus, and, it's a super healthy way to breathe as well. And in terms of like performance stuff, like if you're looking at bike riding, rowing, a lot of the stuff is going on at the Olympics at the moment, people getting inspired to go out there and train and stuff. You will retain about 44% more moisture inside the body by simply breathing through your nose. It's easier to see on the exhale in the wintertime. When you exhale, you can sort of see the condensation or the steam leave the body. But that's actually happening all the time. Even now, even though the temperature is like 18, 19 degrees here, it's still happening. You just can't see it so often. So we close the mouth and we actually retain that in the body. So if you're doing long distance running and races, you won't get dehydrated so much. Or obviously that's a useful thing in daily life too.
Mm. And how could our listener self-identify as mouth breather? They may be listening to this and they perhaps didn't know the difference about nasal breathing and mouth breathing up until this point. How could they self-identify and go, yes, I am a mouth breather?
Well, there's a few ways. The most if we look at the default mode of breathing, it's usually, we can find that usually during the sleep, right? So, when you wake up in the morning and if you have a little bit of bad breath or you have like this very dry mouth or you even have brain fog in the morning, they're usually telltale signs that you've been sleeping with the mouth open. Other than that, it's like it's really just like a conscious thing, right? Like, it's really about checking in with yourself often, like taking this moment in time. Like if you feel a shift in your state, right? This is the way I built it up in my own self. If I felt somehow stressed, I was like I already found myself kind of like huffing and puffing a little bit. So it's just sort of like identifying that moment and then saying, actually, now I take 3 breaths or 5 breaths, or now I need to breathe for 1 minute, or actually I have 5 minutes, so maybe I will go and, this is the way to do it. Sometimes if, in the early days I was taking bus around, it would be like, I'd be like running towards the bus a little bit late or something like this. And I'm like running. And then I'm on the bus. I put pay the bus, everything, sit down. And I'm sort of like, in a bus full of people, you're like, it's kind of like you want to self-regulate. You're like, okay, how do I, and you don't want to be like this. So it's sort of, okay, what are we going to do? We slow the breathing, take a little pause, exhale gently. We can even exhale through the mouth if we really want to and release some of the CO2. And 3, 5 breaths later, you feel completely different. So, just becoming aware of it. Obviously, when you're, if you have a child and you're kind of like, you're frustrated or there's like they're misbehaving or something like this, it's like about checking in with yourself. Like, how do I want to approach this emotional or this this situation, for example, or you are, you're late from somewhere and you want to be kind of humble yourself into the meeting, whatever it might be. There's a way always to sort of like regulate your own state before before acting or before reacting, certainly.
Absolutely. What do you think about the connection between mouth breathing and sleep apnea and or snoring?
Well, it's the primary cause of it. Basically, that's the short of it. There's a few other factors as well, right? Like if you have you have to look at a few things when you're talking about sleep. Collectively, there's a lot of things to look at. Number one is like breathing is, if not number one, it's like 1A or 1B. The other really important thing is the position of the head, right? So a lot of people, me included, up until not so long ago, a few years back, I had the completely wrong shape and wrong sort of density pillow, and that was really wreaking havoc on my sleep, because I feel stress very easily up in my trapezius muscles here. I just find that if I'm a little bit tense or I have a bit of rising stress or anxiety or something like this, I will really, really early see it here and feel it here. So when I go to sleep, if I don't have a pillow that sort of isolates those muscles, like if these muscles are sort of on the pillow and the pillow is a bit sort of long, if they're on the pillow, I get severe like neck pain like this. And it's the same for many people, actually. So I invested in a pillow. It was about 160 euros, not so much in a way, of course, when you're talking about sleep and you're spending 8 hours with that pillow. It's a great investment, but it really, really made a big difference. And as you know, when you're laying down, and if it's too soft a pillow, what would happen is your head, let's say I'm laying down, your head will sink backwards and it will sort of like open up the airway from the throat. And of course, that's where if the head's tilting backwards, the jaw is dropping down, and then you're more inclined to be breathing through the mouth anyway. So having a supporting pillow helps you breathe better. It supports sort of nasal breathing during the night. And of course, one of the most, I don't know, it's a little bit sort of like this showy thing that people do in the breathwork world, is that they're taping the mouth, right? So in a way, what they're trying to do, you probably know what I'm going to say about this, but like a lot of people get it wrong because they really feel like the tape is to really seal the mouth closed. And it's not about sealing the mouth closed. It's about keeping the lips together so that the jaw is actually together. It's not about creating some seal there. Actually, in many cases, that's very, very even more stress for somebody who's trying, like to only breathe through the nose. And we're not going to be doing that to children, right? We don't want to tape the kids if we were trying to get them to sleep breathing through the nose. So the tape is literally, you can do it more sort of like in this vertical way rather than the horizontal way, where you literally just put a little strip of tape just over the lips, just keeping the lips closed, and then that will help a lot. And of course, it's a more calmer, more relaxed way of breathing. So of course, it reduces the sleep apnea and the disruptive sleep habits that we sort of like accumulate along the way.
And I find that mouth taping is actually quite a nice way to build self-awareness, because if it initially bothers you a little bit, then it is probably an indicator that you would have resorted to mouth breathing. Because in an ideal world, if you were not a mouth breather, then that wouldn't really make a difference other than the sort of psychological.
And spot on. That's exactly it.
It's how I realized, and through mouth taping and the way I did it. And I would love for you to tell me whether I did it in the right way or not, but to really navigate around being a mouth breather to becoming a non-mouth breather, I did it gently in the evening before bedtime, in the 1 to 2 hour window, while doing low stress activity, reading a book or just getting myself in a parasympathetic state, doing a guided meditation or a hypnosis, so that I would become accustomed to the tape and then keep it on, as opposed to putting it right before bed. What's your take on that approach? And do you have any other tips or strategies for our listener?
I'd say that's probably the perfect way to do it. That's like exactly how I would guide someone towards that. You know, with sleep, the sort of like sleep hygiene and everything, like what you're explaining there is like can soon become part of your sort of like your sleep protocol in a sense, right? Because a lot of people feel like they're running around vacuuming the house at 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. or something and doing whatever, and then jump into the bed and it's like, okay, now I got to start sleeping, and it's not really like that. You're going from second or third gear to like you want to be in sort of neutral, right, when you're going to sleep. So how you've described it is exactly like I would describe that like it's a downshifting of the gears, so that you're like really on the brink of feeling tired. You have some even reishi, or you have some sort of like herbal tea or something that kind of calms the nervous system anyway. The meditations are great. The breathing practice is great, because then it's sort of like just like literally physically getting to the bed after that, or maybe you're even listening to the meditation or the hypnosis or whatever whilst you're in the bed, So I would give that like top marks, like seriously, it's like exactly the like gold standard way to do it. Really.
I was wondering if you could walk us through a bit of experiential journey through the breath for two different situations. One where I feel very stressed and anxious, and I would like to downregulate with my breath. And another one where I just feel a bit groggy and sleepy and not really switched on. And I would like to be a little bit more aroused, not more stressed, but more aroused, more focused, more switched on with my breath. Could you perhaps guide us through different modalities of breath that would achieve those results?
Yeah, like at the risk of like, I will give you like for the down regulation, I will give you like a very, in a way, like one standard answer for this, one standard experience, and then I'll give you another one because I don't want to be so stereotyped. But look, the cliches and the stereotypes are there because they work, right? So I think most people have seen or heard of this 4-7-8 breathing technique, which basically means that you inhale for a count of 4. And then you kind of have this pause, and, like the pause is not like, we deliberately call it a pause and not a hold, because it's really not, it's in between an inhale and an exhale. So we would inhale for 4 seconds, we would be in the pause for 7 seconds, and then we have this nice long exhale, which would be pushing gently the air through the lips, like just like that, like you're blowing through a straw for 8 seconds. Now, this really, really works because it's sort of like the combination of, in a way, like a yogic practice, because yogic breathing and pranayama breathing is known to kind of like really calm and down-regulate the nervous system, but also give like a little bit more like focus to things too, it can do. But of course, it's a 1-part inhale to a double, or a 2-part exhale. So in 4 and 8, that works. But then also, as I mentioned before, CO2 is the trigger to release the oxygen. So when we take this 7-second pause in between, that's giving a little bit of time for the CO2 level to rise. And then we get a little bit of oxygen delivery inside the blood. And that kind of like calms us and makes us feel like relaxed as well. And then really interesting part, if you actually add, like if we think about it, like the average rate of breath for a healthy person is somewhere between 12 to 20 every minute, right? 12 to 20 breaths every minute. Now, I'm saying to people and guiding people that, like, if you really want to, and this is rested, by the way, obviously we're not talking about someone jogging around the place and trying to breathe like 12 times in a minute. That's not going to happen. But if we can get somebody from 6 to 12, that's kind of like in a way, like the very, very calm, very, very almost like a like a Yoda, Master Yoda level kind of Zen. And then a lot of people are saying, well, but six breaths is it's not so many. If you take the 4, 7, 8 breathing, if you really add those together, what is it, like 8, 7, that's 15 plus 4, that's 19. If we times that by 3, that's almost like it's 58 or whatever. So that means it's 1 minute. So that actually gives us 3 complete breaths in 1 minute. So it's very, very possible to get the breathing rate down very drastically and very comfortably, very quickly with that technique.
I love that. I'm a big fan. I really love bringing my breath to 6 breaths a minute. I find that that's a sweet spot, and the lower you get to, the calmer you feel. And I remember when I was very stressed out and burning out, I was 21 breaths a minute. I learned that through one of my coaches, and it was just a staggering number, and I was blissfully unaware.
Yeah. And like, so the another one that's very very sort of easy to remember as well, because a lot of people, a lot of high performers, a lot of people in the business world, they're becoming more and more familiar with the technology too, right? So a lot of people are carrying around, or they're using the Oura ring, right? And they're getting it right. They want to measure the heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is very important to keep a track of, because it's literally the gap in between the heartbeats, right? So we want to have a little bit more gap in between the beats of the heart. It means that if it's being a little bit longer, it's not so much. It's just really fraction of a time, right? Like it's really fraction of a second in a way. But once we start measuring this over the course of a day, a week, a month, and actually, if they get longer and longer, we're more relaxed, and it's showing us and it's indicating that we're not so much in that stress state. Now, the one thing that we know, this is a sort of a more of, if you want to say it, like an extended practice, is literally just to breathe in. It can also be through the mouth. It doesn't actually matter so much. But if you would just breathe in for 5 seconds, and then as soon as you've reached the top of that inhalation, then you would breathe out and exhale for 5 seconds. So you would just keep this nice and steady, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, and then you would do this for 5 minutes. So if you did this for 3 times a day, what you would see if you're measuring this is that your heart rate variability, the beat, the time between the heartbeats would actually lengthen, right? And this is happening all the time. This is a really easy one to do. I mean, you can be like literally, you don't have to watch on the clock or anything like this. You can kind of intuitively go with this. You can even be typing an email. You can be just listening to your favorite song that's around about 5 minutes or something like this, and just breathing. And if you would do that 3 times a day, the effects of this are like really, really good over the long term. So sorry if I explain these things like in such a long way or a lengthy way, but that's the down regulating ones, right?
That's great. Leigh, can I pause here before you answer the second part of the question? Yeah. Could we practice each for 1 minute? Would that be an option? If we did the 4, 7, 8 for 1 minute, and then the 5 and 5 for 1 minute, so our listener can practice with us?
Yeah, of course.
Love that.
So wherever you are now, I invite you, if you're just seated, I'd like to invite you to have a nice posture, right? So if you're in a chair or if you're laying down, it's okay as well. But just make sure your spine's nice and straight. And then you can close your eyes if you like. And just connect with your own breath for a second. You can just sort of feel the air as it moves in. And you can breathe whichever way you like. You don't have to breathe in through your nose if you're not used to it. And in 3, 2, 1, we take a nice deep inhale through the nose or through the mouth, letting the air flow inside the body. 3, 4, Now we're going to take a pause for 7 seconds. So relaxing the body, no tension, no air moving in or out of the body. 4, 5, 6, 7. Now breathing through the lips, we're going to be exhaling, gently pushing the air through the lips like we're breathing through a straw. 6, 7, 8. Now nice inhale either through the nose or through the mouth, welcoming the air inside the body. 3, 4, into the pause, no tension anywhere in the body. Just pausing here for a moment in between the inhale and exhale. 6, 7, and exhaling, gently pushing the air through the lips, nice and softly, nice and relaxed. 6 and 8. And one more time round, breathing in, welcoming the air in, pulling it inside the body, nice and gentle, nice and steady. Into the pause, relaxing the jaw, relaxing the face, relaxing the back. And now moving towards the exhale, just gently moving the air through the lips, controlling the airflow gently. And there we are. And you can just return to a natural rate of breath. And so it's around about, that one's around about a minute. Like everyone has a minute for that, surely, you know, it's super easy. Now,
super easy and super effective. I feel great.
Yeah, and you can kind of feel the difference really quickly, right? Like, you know, some of the little parts that people, sort of like the little things to help people on that one is obviously we'd love to be able to breathe through the nose if you can, but like it doesn't matter. If you're just getting started with it, you can just kind of channel the air. The same way we exhale through the lips, you can actually sort of like gently, sort of almost like gently suck the air in through the lips as well on the inhale so that you can control the airflow and you can make it this 4-second inhale. So that's one little tip. Obviously on the pause, what we're really hoping for is like complete relaxation in the body. I could have definitely mentioned just a couple more hints there of the relaxation, of course, but you know, the idea is to just have no tension. Obviously, if we have any contraction or any tension in the jaw or in the shoulders or anything like this, it actually requires oxygen and blood to move to hold it there, you know. So the more loose and more free we are in the body, the more easier it is and the more relaxed you are. And then, of course, just sort of like really feeling the sort of relaxation and calm on the exhale as well. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the one there. This heart coherence breathing is the name of the other one, where it's like a 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale, and we would practice that for 5 minutes. We could actually we could just do like 5 rounds of that. You know?
Let's do 5 rounds. Yes.
Like 5 inhale and exhales. So let's do that one. Again, so wherever you are, you can just find a nice cozy position. Make sure that the spine's always nice and straight so that you don't have any twists or turns in it like that. If you're in a chair, you can even lean back. If you're laying down, that's okay as well. And as I just mentioned, you might even like to, on the inhale, once we get going, to just sort of like channel the air through the lips. That's a nice and easy way to pull the air in rather than kind of like if you're not used to the nasal breathing, it can be like you're really trying to pull the air in and try like extra. So we don't want to be in that situation. We want to be nice and calm, nice and relaxed. And then on the exhale, we're trying to feel that nice relaxation on the exhale. Okay? So once again, just feeling your own breathing right now. Minimizing the breath, calming everything down. And in 3, 2, 1, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale right away, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just taking a moment there. Find your own rate of breath like this. So a little bit different, a little bit more constant rate of breath. But I think everyone's been in a meeting before when you know, there's been people in the meeting. Sometimes you hear people that are super loud with the breathing, almost panting, things like this. I've certainly been in this situation before where someone has really been like this the whole way, and I was like, oh my goodness, like this is like, I feel like the whole time I was kind of like, oh, I really want to help this person, but I don't want to bring it up in front of everyone. But like, it's more constant breathing, but all it takes is to have the person just be conscious, aware of the breathing, and just channel it in that kind of way, 5 by 5. It's so easy.
So easy to remember.
Yeah.
And Leigh, on this one, on the second modality, just to clarify for our listener, we don't pause, right? So there is no break between the just inhale and the exhale.
Inhale, 5-second exhale, and for 5 minutes, just like this. So it's kind of like these, it's like an intervention of the breathing, you know? If we were practicing that 3 times a day, it could be even like something that you would do in the morning. It could definitely be something you do sort of like, I don't know, before lunch, because it's not always the most comfortable thing to breathe with belly full of food or something like that. Or it could also be after lunch, a little bit later. And then it could also be something that you would like to do, for example, of the evening, or maybe part of the sleep protocol, for example, like finding your way towards the bed and those down-regulating exercises. But if you are measuring your heart rate variability, or if you do have an aura, I encourage you to check it out, try it, and then you'll literally see the progress, or you'll see the effect that it has on your breathing and of your heart rate.
And of course, this is fantastic to do with a guided meditation or with mindfulness, for instance. But if you can't afford 5 minutes without multitasking, then you can do it while you do your first email of the day, for instance, or while you file your emails, or while you close off, or while you log in or log out of a meeting. Of course, in an ideal world, you want to do it really super mindfully as its own activity. But it's still beneficial, isn't it, Leigh, to do it while you do something else?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good thing about breathing, you know. It's like all it takes is for you to be conscious about it, and it doesn't necessarily matter where you're doing it, you know. Like you can be just about anywhere. So you just have to make the decision that I would like to do it, and then there you are. As I said before, like I feel like I need to say it again, because you like literally just want to breathe the way you want to live. Like you also mentioned about the energy, right? Like and how to generate or produce energy in the body.
Yes.
And there's a really easy way to do that as well. This one's definitely a little bit more invigorating. So you might start to feel some sort of tingles, you know, and things like this. But essentially what it is we would just take 10 breaths using the nose. I'll give you a little demo of this. We breathe in through the nose and we just let the air out. We don't push it out, we just let it fall out. So let it fall out. Let it fall out. Let's do 5 more. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Letting it out like this. And all of a sudden you feel a little bit of this tingle and this kind of oof, like this. If you wanted to, what's also nice, it's so simple. It's just 10 breaths like this. It's active inhale, very passive exhale, or just letting the diaphragm just do the work for you, actually. You could even just do a pause, like we had practice with the 4, 7, 8. If you like that, if you want to get that kind of this very neutral sort of you've got this energy, then could you actually, in a way, use that to focus on something? Or if you want to dive onto a subject or a thought, or you're stuck with something, you could take this pause. You could make it 10 seconds. You could extend it to 20 seconds or a little bit further if you feel that it's okay without any force. And that's a good way to sort of like access some sort of like little insight or a breakthrough or have this focal point for whatever task you're doing as well.
And I love that you mentioned about active and passive, because very often when I talk to my clients about active or passive inhales and exhale, that's the first time they even heard about this notion. And I think there is a big piece of education there that needs to be done around active and passive. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's so funny because it's like I keep saying, it's just breathing, right? But like really, really, like little, like tinkering with the breath slightly. You know, like the difference of having a nasal inhale and like breathing out through the mouth and lengthening that changes like everything. And then if you switch it around, it goes like completely the opposite direction. So, you know, there's so many ways that you can like hack into the breath, right? And by the way, the best way to learn about those things is really just try it yourself sometimes too. Like what would happen if I do this or that? But this passive, it's really interesting because this passive exhale for me is something that's super, like it a little bit comes from this rebirthing breathing. And this is sort of like a very, it can be like, it's known as a transformative breathing. Sometimes it's used in a therapeutic way as well. And it's really kind of snapping off this exhale. And this is like a really interesting sensation, because a lot of us feel like we have to have like this, the inhale, we're pulling the air in, but then we like really have to exhale as well. And in actual fact, the diaphragm will do the work for us. So we can kind of piggyback off that and create this energy or like a momentum in the body. That's why I like it for this sort of uplifting. And as you kind of felt when we did that breathing just a second ago, there is like a, like, you know, a typical session, by the way, in rebirthing could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, sometimes longer, breathing like that. So obviously it brings a lot of things to the surface, right? And it's very active breathing. That is a super, super active breathing. People, I'm sure that the listeners, and I know that you have tried it as well, Charlène, like this Wim Hof breathing. A lot of people know about that. And that is like, in a way, like the opposite way, right? Because that's still breathing in and then pushing out. Like it's a very active exhale, like, and we're literally giving the CO2 away. We keep giving the CO2 away, and we breathe 30 times or 40 times in some cases. And then at the end, they're asking us to do the pause. Now, the likelihood of that pause being longer is increased because we've been giving the CO2 away, right? And the CO2 is the trigger to release the oxygen and also the trigger for us to want to breathe again. So we're kind of delaying that process or delaying the signal there. That's why that one works in that way. And of course, when you have these really long pauses, obviously when the CO2 level sort of like rises, that's actually when the oxygen's being released, and that's when it feels a lot of those physical sensations, you know, when you get the tingles in the fingers, toes, and whatsoever. So
The T-Rex hands as well when you do it for extended periods of time.
yeah, exactly. It's a very strong one. It's very like, that's certainly a breathing technique that you feel a lot of things. You know, you feel a lot of those physical sensations, and a lot of the time. Especially if you're doing it with listening to Wim Hof on the internet or on YouTube or whatever, you hear his voice and he's got this super, very, very, in a way, like a very masculine voice, obviously, but like it's this kind of push, 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 and he's sort of like encouraging you to go, go, go. And that's not for everyone, but there are ways to do that particular technique where you don't have to be so fast. You don't have to be you know, doing 30 breaths in like about, you know, a minute or a minute and a half. You can kind of dial it back. You can still get the effects, and you don't have to give rise to this sort of like hyperactive sort of state inside the body. But like I said, like, the whole, to sort of like wrap this up, it's like the only real bad breathing, in a sense, like when we're looking at all these practices, is the one that you're not conscious of, right? We can train the unconscious breathing to be really good. We can train ourselves to have this really, really good default way of breathing, where we breathe through the nose, we're using the diaphragm, we have great posture, all of these things. But when it comes to the techniques, it's really up to like what you're trying to get out of it and what your intention is. A lot of times, and when I first started exploring and experimenting with all these techniques, I was just like, hey, let's go for it. And I had really no intention whatsoever. And I was like, well, that didn't really do anything, or that didn't work. And it's like, well, what was I trying to get out of it? It was just like listening to someone on the internet just like yelling away, or some nice music or something. And it wasn't until I started to understand, like, hey, I would really like to like down regulate, or hey, I want to feel euphoric. I want to get that kind of like, that awakened sort of like journey kind of thing going on. Like, so maybe I'll go towards that. Or maybe I just want to go to sleep at night, Maybe that's what I want out of it. So the intention is the key thing. One small anecdote I can have about that is one really well-known breathwork practitioner had contacted me, and he had seen a breathing technique which really uses the whole body. So when you inhale, you're kind of like inhaling back, and then you exhale forward, and you're kind of there in a cross-legged seated position, and it's really, really involving the whole body, and it's very active, and it was very yogic driven breathing, and very masculine, because it was very like huffing and puffing. And he asked me, like, what do you think of this breathing? What do you think of this breathing practice? And I said, well, first, what do you think about it? And he said, I don't like the biomechanics of it. They're using the mouth breathing. And I said, oh, did you reach out to these two guys who were doing this breathing? Did you ask them what their intention was? Do you know what they were trying to achieve? He said, no. And I said, well, how can we really judge that, in a sense? Or why are we judging this? Like they might have had a specific place they were going to with the breathing, and they might have absolutely got there with that, And he's like, oh yeah, good point. So it's really like it might look different from like we're not always like 100% of the time, we're not always trying to breathe like calm, otherwise you would never get anywhere with your athletic endeavors or your fitness or your VO2 max stuff.
Yeah. I always tell my clients, tell me how you want to feel and I'll tell you how to breathe.
Exactly this. Yep. It's exactly the starting point.
Leigh, it's been a fascinating conversation. And the one last thing I would like to ask you is a little bit about your book, and how can our listener connect to your world and your breathwork guidance and expertise. I'm so thrilled that you've published your first book on breathwork, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and direct us to the best way to connect with you after this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning it. Yeah. It's a really interesting one because it's a little bit, it's deliberately triggering in some way, or eyebrow raising title, because it's called Re-Spiritual Awakening. Now, the sort of background of that is that if you think about the respiratory system, respire means to breathe again. Now, if we look at the Latin in language, spirare actually means spirit, which means translated means to breathe. So we look at spirit, to breathe. We look at rebreathe, meaning again, means respire, respiritual, So the spirit, breathe, re-spiritual. It's an awakening of just understanding the breath again. That's literally what it means. And also in the corporate setting, what I found really interesting as well was that every company is talking, when the company has the mission statement, they're always talking about we create an inspiring environment, and we aspire to become the global leader in da 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 da. Well, when we look at inspire really means to breathe in, inspire, to breathe in, which is why when you look at those, these television show where, the one where they have the, Britain's Got Talent, and you have somebody that jumps on the stage and they have a microphone and they're like, hey, my name's Leigh and I'm going to be singing something, something, something. They have the lovely celebrity judges there. They have the theater is full of thousands of people, and then they have to sing. And maybe they've just been singing in the shower at home, but then they sing. And let's just say that this person's very good. What does the camera look to in the crowd, right? They look to people, that often there's two people, and they're like, oh, that person's really good. Like you see it, they're covering the mouth and they're breathing in. They're actually inspiring. They're inspired by this. Now, fast forward to the end of the song, and when you have the person with the microphone and they sing the last note, and then the crowd stands up and they applaud them, then what does that person do? They're also like, oh my God, like I'm good. So this inspiration is a very, very reactive thing. It's a very exciting thing, but it's very deep-seated reaction inside of our body, and it's a very reflective thing. We're constantly seeing that in each other all the time. Then the aspiration really means to breathe upon something. It means breathe to the top. So again, in the corporate setting, when we're laying out the mission statements, it's like, what do we really mean by that? So I'm helping people via the book, and the chapters of this book are kind of like helping people to re-explore what it truly means to be inspired and to aspire and to conspire. And conspire means co-inspire, co-inspiring together, breathing together, right? Also means other things too. But then the last breath is expire, And so, like, really there's a lot of things and a lot of inspirations to have in those 25,000 breaths every day before we expire as well. So it's a kind of like a fun wordplay, but there's actual many practical exercises at the end of each chapter as well, as to help people kind of like really feel those, the chapter, what I'm been speaking about. Yeah.
I'll be putting the link into the show notes, and I'm really grateful for this. And I'm definitely inspired by our conversation. So thank you, Leigh.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I really appreciate your insights today. Mm-hmm. Take care and keep inspiring the world. One breath at a time.
One breath at a time. Exactly.
Take care. Now that you've learned about the extraordinary power of breathwork to optimize your personal well-being and boost your professional performance, I have a gift for you. Download your Breathwork ebook by following the show notes so that you can start your personal breathing journey guided by me.